Uh, Good evening, everybody. We're running late, so we'll have a short introduction, and then we'll get straight down to it. The previous panel talked about production, prospects, prices, promises, potential. All very nice, good to hear. We're all in the business to benefit from these positives. So it's a world of peace here. This session is going to talk about problems, pitfalls, the pain, and what do we do to address these important issues. This business is a bit like what I like to compare the automotive situation in India, in Mumbai. You've got next generation cars. There's even a Tesla, I think, that's on its way. But the roads are still prehistoric, antediluvian. So the Ronald business today, the topic is a runaway train. So the business has grown, CAGR of 15%. Indonesia is looking at new plantations. There's newcomers in Asia like Laos, Myanmar. There's going to be a lot of business done. Are we doing enough to make sure that it is regulated properly? The players are protected. The stakeholders have adequate protection and control over performance, over quality, and are the processors who are buying these increased volumes, are they protected at their end? Many questions, few answers. So I'll let Krishnan start the proceedings on this panel, and it'll be followed by Son from Vietnam, is a large importer there, and then Rajesh from Ghana will give us a supplier's perspective. And I've got enough people in the audience, as I see people from Olam. My friend Amit is here. I see Mr. Barkur, who was on the stage earlier, ETG. They're all large suppliers who also have problems that they encounter while dealing with destinations. So I would like the audience to participate extensively in this panel. We've got only 3 people on stage. So we would like a lot of audience participation, please. Thank you.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. We talked about the hardware in the previous session. That is the crop outlook, the infrastructure, and now we are going to look at the software and how we have fared in the past and how we could proceed if we want to. Now, a few weeks before I left for magical, mystical Macau, Mr. Zante of Zante Cashews called me and he told me that Maharashtra, the state of Maharashtra in India, is celebrating the 100th year of cashew processing. Isn't that wonderful, ladies and gentlemen? We are in an industry which has crossed 100 years. But when someone asked me, is there a standard reference point for raw cashew contracts? I had to say no. Well, we had some, we still have some. Vinakas, I believe, has a very good set of reference terms for raw cashews. And rightly so, especially in these days of mechanization, something has to happen, something has to be done about it. But should we have a standard contract for raw cashew? Well, considering that we are sandwiched between a state of circumstantial compulsions and some conventions, and considering the need to take into account the relationships which exist and all the reneged renegotiations, I think it is too puerile and too immature to have one standard set of contract for raw cashew when the needs are different. I would rather that we set some terms of reference, and we have done that already, as Dr. Budesh mentioned here. We have had a committee at the CPCI, and we had some standard terms of reference for raw cashews. But that's not what I'm going to talk here. What I'm going to talk here is you might think it's a very complicated thing, from prudent practices and precedents to proper protocols, procedures, programs, and policies. So when we make these terms of reference, now we have the terms of reference in Vietnam, and ACI has done a wonderful job in giving pictorial representation to the farmers and to the traders there on how to cut cashews and things like that. But shouldn't we have something global, something which is accepted, since today Africa exports not only to India but also to Vietnam and Brazil? And I saw here to Kazakhstan. I don't know whether Kazakhstan's started processing. Maybe it goes to China or some other country. So let's see how we can arrive at this. And here, we have to take the model of the 5 wives and 1 husband. Don't mistake me, I'm not talking about polygamy or polygyny. It is actually a take on Kipling's way of proceeding. He says, the poet Kipling says that he kept 6 honest serving persons, and they were what, when, where, why, who, and how. If you go through this, what is to be done? When does it have to be done? Where should it be done? Why it should be done? Who should do it? Should CPCI, Vinaka, Sindikaju, ACA, and all these countries together do it? Or should we be isolated? And how can it be done? Now we come to the personae. That is I'm not talking about the people, but the kind of players, the philosophy of many players in the industry. A few years ago, when the cashew market crashed, it went down around $500. A very old raw nut supplier of mine, he was cursing the contract because many buyers did not take the cargo. He said a contract is not even worth the price of toilet paper. Maybe he was right, and he classified raw cashew buyers into 6 categories. The large ones, he called them venerable whales. They mind their own business, they are large. There are also big ones with teeth. They take a bite. I'm talking of the buyers. So the raw nut traders need not be concerned. The medium, you have docile dolphins, the medium ones, and you also have sharks. Some of them silent, they keep quiet until the last minute to default. And now you come to the smaller category. You have serene sardines who go about their job, rich in omega-3, and you also have predatory piranhas. They strip you to the bone. Now this is regarding the buyers. The very next year, the market went up $500, and I asked the same gentleman, raw nut supplier, how would you categorize your own kith and kin? And he had no answers, but a very good buyer said we have to talk of elephants and maybe T-Rexes and perhaps many other categories which are land mammals, and I don't want to go into it. So it is all a matter of perception. You don't have good buyers, good suppliers, bad suppliers. The Emperor Napoleon, he fought 52 battles. Unfortunately, he lost the last 2. And we remember only Leipzig and Waterloo. So every supplier or every buyer is as good as his last contract. And we have to respect that and not put anyone into any mold. So who are the people who are involved in this? Whom should we consider in this journey? You first, is this on? You first have to look at the kernel buyer, because everything comes from kernels. The demand for raw cashew is not a primary demand. It is an industrial raw material, and it depends on kernels. But right now, it is behaving like an independent commodity. Then you have the processor, you have the trader, and you have the farmer. On the fringes, you have the governments, the regulations, and you have the facilitators like the banks, the shipping lines, the inspection agencies. Now, how should the terms of reference be set? It should start from the kernel buyer requirements to the processor's requirements to the trader's requirements, and then come down to the farmer. And then you also have the governments and the facilitators to consider. See, but what happens now is The processor is in a fix because the kernel contracts are made by the kernel buyers, and the raw nut contracts are made by the raw nut sellers. So the requirement of the processor, who has to fulfill all the terms in a developed country or in any other country regarding food safety, it is not passed on to the trader. So here, this is something which we have to consider very seriously. So what are the principles we have to consider when we go in for setting terms of reference? Rice. First is respect. It should consider each and every person in the chain. Integrity. It should be fair. It should not be one-sided. It should be of some utility. We cannot just write something and say, okay, it is not done. And it should promote excellence. It should promote improvement of quality, improvement of good trading practices. Otherwise, it wouldn't stand. So from prudent practices and precedents, we should go to proper protocols, procedures, programs, and policies. When I talk of practices, we must consider why we have certain things like, why do we always take the yield for an 80 kg bag? Why do we do that? Why can't we have something better like 100 kgs or 1 metric ton? Because this practice came up more than a century ago. An 80 kg bag was the maximum a worker could carry, and so it was set at 80 kg. Why do we export 50 pounds? Why not something more? For example, in India, if you sell 50 pounds in India, it is illegal. It comes to 22.68, which does not fall under the metric system. So why do we have this 50 pound? Because the first consignment of cashews from India went in tea chests, which were 50 pounds. The precedents. In the past, the people were whites. They set a minimum for the good things and a maximum cap for the bad things. So we have a minimum outturn and a maximum count, maximum moisture, maximum admixture, and maximum defectives. Now this minimum outturn principle is now being violated when people say, if it's 51 pounds, okay, this is the price. But if you get more than that, you have to give us more. No processor or exporter of cashew kernel will get a better price if we export 315 count cashews instead of 320s. So I don't think it should work the other way also. These are the guides and beacons, and we cannot ignore this. The practices and the precedents. And now we come to the operational things. Those are the protocols. Who should do what, which order, where, and why it has to be done. The procedures, how to take samples, how to determine outturn. Now a lot of this has already been mentioned in Vinaka's protocols and also in the ACI protocols. The programs. We need programs for training and for reference, and we also need policies encompassing all the above and some sort of a codification. In the end, what do we want? We want peace of mind. We want to sleep at night. So when we go through these processes, let us do it through debate, dialogue, discussion, and demonstration, rather than dissent, distortion, disruption, and delay. I rest my case. Over to you, Ashok.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Tyson from Longson Joy Stock Company. We are the largest importer of cashew for our production in Vietnam. So every year we import 70,000 tons of raw cashew nut. And today I will talk about, as you know, that Vietnam is importing a lot of raw cashew nut from Africa and everywhere like Indonesia. And because of processing capacity of Vietnam is huge. So that's why the competition for getting the raw cashew nut is also very, very tough between the factories in Vietnam. And also the demand of kernel, as you know, that also very good. So export from Vietnam, kernel continue to increase every year. Last year, we increased export of kernel about 3.7% in quantity. But in value, we increased a lot. Since 2011, when the market or raw-seed market crashed, so many people out of the business. But since then, up to 2016, the market, keep moving up, and the raw cashew nut, non-stop increasing. So that is the reason why, we have even some of the factories. Before they used to be big processor, but then they say, maybe processing not making good money as trading raw cashew nut. So even some big processor, they reduce production, but they increase trading cashew. So that's why there's huge competition of buying raw cashew nut from Africa, import raw cashew nut from Africa. And everyone most enjoy the profit since 2012 until 2016. Most people enjoy profit because market continue to rise. But sadly say that last year, many people have suffered trading raw cashew nut. Not only people who trade raw cashew nut, but people who buy raw cashew nut for their own production also suffer. Now, when I'm here, still I receive the phone call from one of the factory begging me to buy the factory because he's, totally, lost a lot of money and go bankruptcy. So as you see that this year, Vietnam is having so many problems buying raw cashew nut from, seed traders. As you know, when the demand is too much, too big demand, so people even buy from unreliable seller. Even like me, before I don't have any problem, but last year I also have problem because everyone hurry to buy. If I don't buy, I cannot have enough raw cashew nut for my factory. So I have to buy, and I bought direct from some reliable, but they cannot supply me enough. Then we have to buy from small people and through other brokers. And sadly say that there's some brokers, in Vietnam, don't know much about the seller. They just meeting, like last year, some broker in Vietnam come to Singapore and other and met some of the seed trader in this conference. And then they come back, they say, oh, reliable. This, we do this. And then problem come. So this year, I think most of these people, the unreliable raw seed trader is not here. But I can tell you what is the problem Vietnam facing last year. 2017, we're facing a lot of problem. What's this? Advance payment not being, even they ship, but even some of them don't ship, but still not refund the advance payment. No advance payment, or they ship just part of it, and then still keep advance payment. And we ask them, okay, now you don't ship anymore, the crop is finished. So at least even penalty they cannot pay all, but at least pay me the advance payment. But they say, oh, I'm sorry because the supplier has not paid me yet. So I'm sorry, I cannot pay you now. You see, this is one of the problems is Vietnam facing. So many people lost money because of advance payment. The second is quality. You know that when demand is big, it's always quality is down. Same thing happened for kernel buying in Vietnam. When demand is big, huge, then quality is down. Same thing like a raw cashew nut. When demand is big, price up, then we are facing quality problem. Many problem on quality. You know very well that this year Vietnam facing too many problems on quality. At first, everyone is happy. Honestly, I have to say, at first, everyone is happy because the first crop from Nigeria, first crop from Ivory Coast, the quality is good. So that's why people, oh, okay, oh, the crop is good, quality is good. So people, sign contract. But later, problem comes. The outturn is later of Ivory Coast, the outturn is less. And then, because of high price, so people don't dry well. Many sellers don't dry well. So the quality at loading port and the quality at landed is much different. Even 3 pound, 4 pound outturn is different. So a lot of claims you still, cannot resolve. I think, one of the reasons, Vietnam delegation is not going, this year, not coming here very much because of maybe we don't have a good year. If we have good year, I think a lot of people will be coming here because, the enthusiasm to buy more raw cashew nut, I think maybe for Vietnam maybe a bit less now because of problem. So people, not many Vietnamese people coming here for looking for raw cashew nut for the new crop. So how to solve this problem? I think this is very difficult. This is not easy. To say about the standardize the contract in a rising market is very, very difficult. And Vietnam, we have too many buyers want to buy raw cashew nut. And you ask, okay, to standardize the raw seed contract, this condition, this I can do in 2011 when market is down, when market is down, some of sellers say, oh, Mr. Sun, last year we have contract like this. Why this year you change this condition, you change? I told them last year because the market is firm and I need cashew. So even I don't like the conditions. But I have to accept because otherwise I don't have cashew. But this year because of supply is good, demand of raw cashew not very big. So this year I want to change. And you agree or not? And they agree. But since last few years, processors like us, if we put the conditions, the seller will accept it or not? I don't think so. Because, if we put conditions, they said, no. If we put this condition, I don't want to sell to you, I will sell to other who will, accept this condition, no problem. So to standardize the format of the contract, Vinacast has been discussing this. Many people have discussed this, but up to now, not successful. So all depends on mutual, discussion between the buyer and the seller. Yeah. So I think, I have spoken now to you, what Vietnam has been facing, what's the problem we are facing, and why we are not here. Not many Vietnamese people are here. So I hope, that from the learning experience, the Vietnamese people will choose who's the right partner, who's the right supplier, who's the right seller to buy from. And I hope that in African country, it's so important that, how to control the moisture content. This is very, very important because a lot of money has been wasted unnecessarily just because of moisture. When the seller at landed port, vina control cutting test, 3 or 4 outturn is less. They lost a lot of money. Even the supplier lost money. So very difficult for us to make claim to them because it's a lot of money, maybe about $200 per ton's claim. And it's a lot of money. So the best way, I think, is for the government of Africa, when export, how to control, the drying of the raw cashew nut. And recently, Vinacast have discussion about what's going on with quality in Africa. And people say that because of, in Africa, you don't dry very well, so maybe outside, from outside, the moisture looks okay. But because of not enough time for drying, so the inside still wet. This is what the VNA control, the inspection committee, inspection committee in Vietnam say, that the main problem is that drying time is not enough. So outside the raw cashew nut is dry, but inside still not yet dry. So that's why during 45 days, 50 days transit time, the wet damage is, occur. So this, causing the problem. For the future price of cashew, as you see, that all depends on kernel price. If the kernel buyer buy high price, of course, we pay high price for raw cashew nut. If kernel price don't pay high price, we cannot pay high price. But I just want to tell you one of the reason we may face problem. Even this year we face a bit, but next year we face more. Is financing problem. It's financing problem. To do the same quantity of cashew, comparing with 3 years ago, we need double money. So who can have this amount of money? And will the bank in Vietnam is willing to finance this high price or not? These two questions. Question one, we don't have enough money. Question two, the bank is not willing to finance because the bank see too risky. And last year they already having problem with the shippers in Vietnam who cannot pay the loan because they are losing money. So this is two questions, two problems for the new crop that Vietnam is facing. So I don't know, but people asking me that, oh, but I see seed traders is having a lot of money to buy the raw cashew nut. I said, yes, seed traders mainly having money from Singapore, from Dubai, from UK, so they have a lot of money. Financing not a problem for them. But sooner or later, they have to sell to Vietnam or they have to sell to India. They cannot keep. So can Vietnam, pay this high price? Now we are talking Nigeria about 2,100, 2,050. We are talking about Ivory Coast, about like 48 outturn, like 2150, 2120, like that. So we wonder if Vietnam can have enough money to buy, or the bank in Vietnam will willing to finance. So this question, I would like you to consider and to think about this. Okay, thank you very much.
Rajesh from Ghana will give us a supplier's perspective, answer some of the questions raised by the, we hope.
My colleagues on the dais, speakers, distinguished friends, all protocols observed, good evening. I am Rajesh Chakkar, exporter from Ghana. Today I have been asked to speak on certain issues which are concerning the raw cashew nuts quality parameters. Quality issues. Why do they happen? Since most of these quality problems arise at the source, it is probably the onus is on the exporters to understand how they manage to control it. What do they do about it? We, as traders of raw cashew nuts, should have and make a conscious effort to improve the quality of raw cashew nuts, which is very highly important for all of us. We all of us in this business know very well how to assess the quality. But still it has been a nagging factor and talked about in probably all the conferences. Now, coming back to the point, why does the exporter do that? If he understands how to manage, how to control the quality, why does he end up not doing it correctly? A, he is not well educated, he doesn't know how to control the quality. It doesn't seem to be a big problem, he could be educated. B, the exporter involved is not a person of high integrity. Well, he won't last in the system. Maybe once, maybe twice. How long can he last? C, the exporter in concern is a person or a company of high integrity, but is driven by certain measures which are beyond his control to deliver goods which are not rightly or correctly dried. So I would like today to focus on the third one and not on the first and the second one. Since today I'm here to present some aspects from the exporter's perspective, this would not be undermining the efforts of my importer friends. So my request would be to have mutual sensitivity on the topic. As our esteemed colleague rightly pointed out, there are no good or bad buyers or no good or bad suppliers. It's a matter of perspective. Few thought processes on these, how it could be resolved or we could reduce these problems. The exporters, I feel, should not be pushed into delivering beyond a certain time frame. There is always a pressure. I mean, you will all agree that living in fear is not the way we like to work. The exporters normally live under the fear of the contracts being dishonored, of prices going down in international market, and hence some kind of claims coming up as far as the prices are concerned. I feel personally most of the quality aspects are driven by commercial reasons, you know. So though we may want to be talking about the quality issues, we cannot rule out the commercial aspects in this business. They are interlinked in some ways, I feel. In international business, of course, we have to meet deadlines. We have to perform in certain time frames. I fully agree with that. Having said that, being a very volatile trade or business, as far as prices are concerned, once the contract has done with the exporter, and if the KYC of the exporter is done, I feel the exporter should not live under fear, but rather put in his complete energies into ensuring that he dries the crop well and delivers it. Because there are many parameters which are not in the control of the exporter. Shipping line schedules, logistics. I mean, most of us will agree we do have our challenges in Africa with many of these logistics issues. So drying the crop also is done manually at our end and not mechanically, which depends on Mother Nature. We are primarily working in monsoon season, as we all know. So we ourselves are not sure as to when the sun would be shining and when it not be. So though we would have a certain idea or fair idea of how we could deliver or when we could deliver, we may not be able to zero in with perfection as to when we would deliver. It could vary. And that variance is where we expect a little more sensitivity from our buyer friends. If the supplier is a reliable person, then he should be given that leverage rather than being under pressure to push moist cargo under pressure. As Sir pointed out, yield. There's no reward to exporters for a higher yield. And I agree. But nevertheless, this is a bilateral or a mutual gain or loss matter which should be probably looked into when Mr. Budes, you would be forming the UCP policy and the contracts which you are working on, as whether the exporter could be rewarded for a better yield. That's something we could probably look into. I'm not saying that he must be, but probably we could look into. That would keep the exporter motivated in probably delivering the right product. moisture, we say the standard should be 10%. How do we measure that? Most of the times I've seen that it is not mechanically done, but by human outlook. Like, a person cuts it and tests it. What I would do probably may differ from what you would do, maybe. So how do we try and work upon having some kind of a base or a parameter where we could be mutually agreeing on it? I mean, there is normally a difference in opinion on these matters. So this is something I'm raising a point for us to think over it, how we should know whether a 10% is not a 12% or not a 8%. We all understand what is well dried, but we may not all agree on what is a 10% maybe. So in these matters, if the exporters are in sync with their buyers of their exact requirements, it would really help. I would have personally recommended or suggested that we should have, I come from Ghana, we do not have it there at least, some kind of agencies like RBS, WINCAS, any such agencies or regulatory bodies which could be present there to inspect the quality, which would reduce the problems. At the end of the day, see, when we do have problems or a bad cargo is delivered, the loss is done, the damage is done. Claims and disputes are only going to work towards trying to settle it, whether amicably or not amicably, but the damage is done. Somebody is going to have a loss, whether it's a seller, buyer, both, or the trade. So how do we prevent that from happening at the point of exit is what I'm trying to say. If we could have some kind of controls there, it could probably reduce these problems. Another point which I feel is a little tough to implement, but it is definitely a request to my exporter friends, that we should stop speculating. I would deliver 2,000 tons in March. Let's have a contract of 400 tons last week, February. I mean, that is done in first week, January, even before the crop has started coming. Now, do we really know whether we are going to be able to perform that? What happens is, at the end of the day, we have a price tag attached to that contract. To fulfill that price tag, we do anything possible under the sun. Whether we hike the prices right on day one, when there's hardly 5 kilos or 10 kilos coming in the market, I mean, there's no flow and the prices would have gone up to 2,300 levels, or we do some other measures. So a little bit of control on these kind of speculations would go a long way, I suggest.
Thanks, Rajesh. Some seller perspective. I will now have the audience, you've heard the points that were discussed. You can not necessarily ask just questions. Anybody's got a comment, anybody's got a perspective to share, please do so.
Yes, Ashok. My question is to Mr. Thaisan from Vietnam. I'm Pradeep from India. Mr. Thaisan, you did mention that you are the biggest importer and you are the biggest processor. And I'm talking about the shippers from India. Indian shippers have been having very serious problems because of high prices, and they could not because the parity is very high. And at the same time, Vietnam, you produce in a bigger quantity, but you sell at a lower money. Don't you think that if you had to increase your price, that your bank losses and the banks will be able to finance you better? Because you are selling today, for example, W320 at 465 and maybe at 485. India can't even think of $5 or $5.15. So my question to you is, how is it that possible? Is it because of that you think that you could sell at these 465, 470?
So I think for all processors in Vietnam, everyone wants to make money. Everyone wants to make money. And in worst case, we want to make money only from selling the shell. So this is what some Vietnamese people calculating today. You know, we are happy. Now we say we'll be happy if we make no money on kernel, but just making small money on the shell. Because we hope that when new crop come, the price will be cheaper, the raw seed price will be cheaper, so we can make money. And for some others, because they have been making money, during the last 4 or 5 years, so they want to, they accept, maybe they can accept losing a bit of money to maintain the factory, maintain the workers. With hoping, everyone is hoping. So if you say in Vietnam, we should stop speculation, this is impossible, so everyone always hope and everyone always speculate. And another thing, I think cost production of Vietnam is cheaper than India. This is 100% sure. Production cost in Vietnam is cheaper than India. So Vietnam managed to sell a cheaper price than India and can still make a little bit of margin or just make money on selling the shell. Because, in business, sometimes, you see, we have bank loan and the deadline of the bank loan is maybe, so in September, you have to pay this. In September, you have to pay this. And in the banking system in Vietnam, they computerized, and they share information with all the banks in Vietnam. I don't know in India or not. If there's a bank loan, then other bank can go and see that if Longson, for example, Longson borrow from other bank, and they can see how much Longson borrow money from this bank, how much Longson can borrow this bank. The banking system, has a risk center, and they share information. So if you don't pay on time, if you don't pay the bank on time, then the computer will say, that you are now, like a bad loan, this is or delay. So then your level in the bank will be lower, causing you problem that maybe in the future affecting you to borrow money from the bank. You know that in Vietnam is developing country and business is booming. So cash is like a king. And the government try to control. The government doesn't allow the bank in Vietnam to, to give loan to the business company. So every year they say, you can only maximum raise 15%, 16%, 17%. The government in Vietnam control like this. They're not even, some banks surplus of money. Even some banks surplus, but they are not allowed to give loan to the business in Vietnam because with the government limit.
My question is, there is counterparty risk which is associated with the buyer and seller. People tend to default.
Right.
So what I'm trying to say is that can we have a rating mechanism or a regulatory mechanism by which this can be reduced and such that the buyer or the seller is able to judge each other more efficiently?
See, that's exactly what we were talking about, terms of reference. Now, I believe that every contract should be something which is sacred, and whatever be, either the shipper, if he's not able to ship, he should compensate the buyer. And the buyer, if he's not able to fulfill it, he should compensate the seller. Now, if you take the processor, as far as the kernel buyers are concerned, we have to fulfill our contracts, even if we are shipping out at $1 loss. And we have done that also last year. But as far as the raw cashew contracts are concerned, we find that it is taken for granted that time is not the essence of the contract. Time is the essence of the contract. If you don't have the time in the contract, then it's not a contract. You should have a time for fulfilling the contract. So these regulations, rules, these are all very rigorous terms. I don't think that you can make somebody obey that. But you can have terms of reference which people can refer to. What happens if the buyer is not able to fulfill? For example, we have seen contracts which say that, it states in this way: vessels call in on ports in Africa very irregularly. So even if we don't ship, it cannot be taken as non-shipment. It is there in some contracts. Instead of putting that, you can always sell for a later term. We also ship out from India. We also ship out from Vietnam. And sometimes we do have delays, and sometimes we have to pay out. It is a price we have to pay to keep our contracts sacred and intact. So if the associations feel, like Dr. Budesh was talking about it, there could be some terms of reference. We have given a way out for our suppliers. We have told them if we can't ship it on this date, you have to show us the goods, tender it, pass it, because we understand the problem in Africa. If that is done, we are willing to extend a contract, maybe by 10 days or 15 days or until the next vessel comes. But that is not what usually happens. When the price goes up, that cargo is given to somebody else. Similarly, when the price crashes, people here, I know people in India or Vietnam, I don't know, it doesn't matter, many people, they don't honor their contracts. So it works both ways. So we have to find out something where raw cashew trade is not, just a piece of paper. It has to be codified.
To add to what Krishnan was saying, it's a good point you make. Can we have a rating system for suppliers and buyers? We've got SEPSI members here. We've got people from Vinakas.
I have, 2-3 points to say. One is that the cashew contract, respecting the cashew contract or respecting the contract, I don't think you can generalize that everybody is doing that. I think I can at least speak for ETG, and I can also probably speak for a few more guys who do substantial volume. No matter where the price go, we don't look at it. Once the contract is done, it's contract, and it is always honored, okay? The second thing, probably, for whatever the reasons why the raw cashew is going up and kernel prices are going up, and maybe there are a number of times there is a disparity. So this business of processing or trade, I think it has to be run on a continuous basis. The moment you have a part-time involvement, definitely you are going to take, either you make a lot of money or you lose a lot of money. The third portion is that point which I am going to highlight here, is that is it not that every other person or every other cashew player wants to become a trader? He goes everywhere. You don't probably vouch the counterparty when you're giving money, and you don't have any mechanism or probably team to monitor your affairs. For example, I can speak again for us that we have 20 plus people only monitoring quality. It's only their job is to monitor quality. So I do think there are a number of times we do make mistakes by just venturing in without knowing the geography, without knowing the local domain. Domain knowledge is little, then you end up in giving money without vouching the counterparty, and you end up in losing money, or the guy shipping a lower quality because he doesn't have a sustainability issue. He doesn't have to sustain for next year. He might look at somebody else or some other places. So if you rely on reputed, probably, time-tested players, I don't think you'll go wrong.
Well, that's a fair point. I mean, a lot of problems can be avoided by dealing with the right people. But then when a market grows from $2 billion to $6 billion, which is what it'll be this year, the size of the business, it is bound to attract more participants. And if there is a possibility for a rating system on neutral terms, it'll be very, very good. But is it possible? I don't know. That is a question for SEPSI, Vinakas, other, pundits in the business.
Is it possible for rating? I think it's one of the worst ideas, because who is going to rate whom? Who's going to rate whom? Everyone has done something good, and some people may not be liked by others, but they're actually adored by some. For example, if CPCI has a rating system, and we say, okay, this is number 1, number 2, number 3 supplier, and one of the CPC members defaults, are we going to blacklist them also? I don't think so. So I don't think it's a good idea rating anyone 1, 2, 3, because ultimately, it's going to harm the industry. I don't know, that's my point of view, but it's...
Well, to counter that, Krishnan, I mean, there is something called rating agencies that do it on neutral terms, and it's not to do with companies or people or somebody specific. It's a performance standard that is evaluated, and then there's a rating which is not 1, 2, 3, but AAA, triple B, 8, AAA plus, etc. So
I agree with Mr. Ashok that rating may not necessarily be 1, 2, 3, 4. That really does not work well in the sense that it would harness some kind of unhealthy competition or inequality. We have Uber drivers and we have Uber customers who are also rated. We have Airbnbs, they're also rated. So probably it could come from some kind of a review or previews from users, buyers, sellers. Some system could be made wherein rating automatically generates. So we are probably talking about a rating which would be, let's say 4 and above in a 5 or something like that, which would make somebody who would want to refer that feel that yes, this seller is reliable or this buyer is reliable up to a good extent. Basically, it's more like a generalizing thing rather than specifically giving it a 1, 2, or 3, or 4 rating. That's what I would feel.
A different query, but I would like to just add on to the current discussion going. As a major buyer of kernels in India, and I'm saying just India, it's not being shipped out, just in India, we have faced issues in delivery and everything in timing. So I for one would welcome something like this, that if there's a rating mechanism, and it doesn't have to be any agency or stuff. I don't know if stuff like a TripAdvisor thing, we're also in the hospitality industry. So it's a common thing. If any of, whether a buyer or a seller, maybe Cashew Info can take some work on this and do something like this, that put in a common platform, put it on a social media thing where if I am a buyer and I am aggrieved, I can put my thing there with the contract or stuff saying the name of the person who has done it. And if that person can't prove, that thing stays. Like in TripAdvisor, we've had, if a customer goes and puts in a fraudulent claim, and the hotel can go back to TripAdvisor and say, no, that we have proof that this wasn't what it was. It is removed. But then some of those stay. So the names stay then. I would say, this is just an example that something can be done because, we face it day in, day out. We get all these new offers from brokers and stuff, and I'll be speaking about it tomorrow. But whenever, since standardization and such transparency is not there, we face issues. So if something like this can be done, that anything can go, anybody can go, there's one website where anybody can go and put the name of the buyer or the seller that this is the problem. If that sticks, it sticks. If it is not, it is removed. So there's a time period of, let's say, 3 days or 5 days or 1 month that is given to the buyer or the seller that this is a complaint against you. Do you want to defend it? If not, then it goes live on that website. So next time any buyer or seller dealing with that company knows that something happened, they can take an informed decision. Today we have defaulters in the market and we still work with them depending on the need. I say, okay, he may have defaulted to him, but he'll be good with me. He's been good with me so far. So I still work, but I can take an informed decision that, okay, this guy has done something in the past. So if there's something like this, I think that mechanism can work.
All right, GS, this is something for you to take under consideration, I guess, to provide a platform. This could work. It could be a bit painful, but maybe it's an idea that people in the industry should give thought to.
Hi, my name is Naveen. I'm coming from California. Basically, we are growers. We do around like 6,000 acres of almonds and pistachios. We started 1,200 acres of cashew nuts in Panama. And from last couple of years, we started sending them out. So from the almond board and the pistachio board, we had a couple of things that came up like this 6 years back. So they started a marketing order. They kept a base price. And regarding the financial product, if the buyer is not able to finance the product, they started giving 25% to the grower every quarter so that the grower can use that money for the whole year to make the things happening and send out the product. That way the finance is provided by the grower itself, and the buyer can use that money and start paying him 25% every quarter. That way both are benefited and they don't have to go for a bank.
I think the problem with cashews is that the number of origins that it's grown in, the almonds is American. It's a first world product. There's enough money in almond board and cage.
If I remember in 1995, I think, there was an ad that came out in California that there's a lot of production, more than like 5 million pounds, and there was advertisement where the entire companies were under the almonds, and everyone is sinking and dying. That's when the marketing order came up. It's from different places. The same thing is, I see so many boards from different countries. Why can't every one single member from the board form a different board, take out 5 cents per kilo from every pound that is being sent out from the grower, and use that money to make as why can't you keep a governing board? Why can't we maintain the cashew price all over the world as a single entity?
See, we already have that. We already have that in India. The CPCI has a system for control of cashew kernels.
Yeah, but
And all the
everyone is
export-
asking about the rating.
All the exporters have to contribute to that, and that takes care of the quality part.
See, we have a what we call is called a blue book, and that is the rating. And in almonds, we have a chart where it shows like what is the kernel size and what is the price for this. Everything is so listed. And every buyer, every seller, or every processor has something called blue book. And the blue book rating produces them whether we can sell it to this buyer or buy it from this buyer or not. Why can't we have some book, everyone will be asking the same question, where is the money coming from? Why can't you take 5 cents from every single kilo that we are selling, from every grower, and use that money to govern this board and govern the entire world with the same thing? Because it's not something new. We can get it from almond board or pistachio board. There's Nut Council, INC. We can get all the resources from them. Even the moisture content, it's not a big deal. We do 4 to 6% of moisture content in almonds. How big is, everything is available.
Naveen, I think you've got that moisture thing a little wrong, because that issue is not about paying for extra moisture or less moisture. It's about the quality
What I'm saying
deterioration
is-
on moisture.
See,
So the supplier has to, by paying him 5 cents or whatever that number is. So 1% of moisture is water. At a $2,000 price, that's equal to $20. So you can't say, I'll pay you $20, so dry it down to 9%.
No.
It doesn't work like that.
What I'm saying is keep a governing body. The problem is arising from the source. Why can't we, like a USDA, when we are shipping out the almonds, they come, check our product at the source itself.
That's a
The
fair
same
idea. Ivory
thing
Coast has
in-
a system like that, where
If a processor is buying a product, why can't he send a guy to that country before shipping itself? Why can't he check all the product before even leaving the country?
because buyers like to have the luxury of buying landed weight, landed quality. So they need to find the right people to deal with. But look, it's a point. It's taken under advisement, because it is something that has to be a responsibility of both the parties to a contract. So it could be done like that. Sir?
Excuse me, one second. Let me finish what he has said. See, I think you have misunderstood the issue. There are 2 types of raw cashew contracts. One is a shipped quality and the other is landed quality. In shipped quality contracts, the buyer sends his representative there to check it. And that's only after that, only after getting the certificate, can that shipment be made. It's only for landed quality that the quality is checked at destination. I hope I've clarified your point.
Yes.
Yes, my name is Ibrahim Komara. I'm from Guinea Conakry, and I just wanted to give my little perspective and have a question. Because it seems like people are thinking that sellers are out to sell bad stuff to buyers. I mean, that's not a reality, but I think the buyer also have to think about what the seller have to face in Africa. We don't have infrastructure, we don't have financing, we have Mother Nature. So if we get a contract and say, okay, we're going to deliver by this day, we don't have an intent to break it, but like he was saying, you have Mother Nature, you have a lot of things that can affect you delivering the product. So I think they should also understand that they have to give a leeway to at least, okay, this has happened, maybe we'd allow you to deliver at a later time, or you can negotiate, because at the end of the day, it's beneficial for both of y'all. Sellers are not, we trying to make money. There's no reason for us to sell you a bad product, because we all want to stay in business. And you have to understand the reality of the growing in Africa. Like, at least from my country, Guinea, you don't have no support from the government. You just have farmers just growing. They don't have no technical experience. So let's say in a contract you say 10% moisture, 8%. How realistically can you verify that? You're going to check 1 or 2 bags and say it's okay. I mean, in reality, that's not going to work. So maybe I think they need to come up with better terms, maybe something more realistic as far as moisture, nut count, defective material, because to me all of that is, I mean, I know it can work, but at the end of the day, it's not really something tangible. It's just my perspective on it.
Oh, your point is well noted, but I think Krishnan answered the question. He said that we understand there could be logistical problems. He wants to see, as a buyer, intent. Good intent is that you've got the goods to the port, you've done your best to dry it on time, you've got the containers, but there is no sailing because that's logistics, that's Africa. You could have the goods in the port, but you don't get empty containers. He already addressed that. He said, if you show to me as a good supplier that you've brought the goods to port in good intent to ship it on time, but you can't do it because of logistics, sure, we'll talk. But do not say that I don't have the goods to ship anymore. That was what his point was.
Now maybe he does it, but I'm just speaking in general. Because
Sure.
most people
Point
they
taken.
don't do that.
Sure. Anybody else?
Can
You can
I-
respond to his
is this
comment.
me? It's me, Asha?
Yeah.
Asha,
Yeah.
can I say something? Honestly, we understand logistic problem, and very honestly, even sometimes, you know, in many cases, when we buy raw cashew nut from Africa, we don't process. We put in the warehouse, and maybe we process 3-4 months later. We process. So we don't, for us, we don't care so much if it is late shipment. But why we always want to push early shipment? Because from experience, all late shipment quality is down because of mother later, because of mother nature. You know, the first crop is always good, and the second crop, third crop is always down. This is the experience of Vietnam. Even we buy early from you, but we don't process. We put 3-4 months, but we still want to receive fast shipment because we believe that if you ship to us fast, it is early crop cashew, then after is high. You see, this is the problem. If all the delay shipment because of logistics, if arrive in Vietnam, what is good, then we can change our mind. We said no problem, but the thing is like this, so that's why we always push shipment on time.
Good evening. My name is Pauline Stoy from Mozambique. I would like to share our experience regarding of the quality. Since 2003, Mozambique invested in training, in the farmers' training of harvest and post-harvest. And we think that the policy is good because we are raising our quality. This is a challenge. So the buyers also, we have to work together because sometimes they promote bad quality. They go to the farmer before the right time to the harvest. That's the big problem. Now we are writing the new policies in the cashew, which one we will guide when the buyers must go to the farmers. And thank you.
The memento is coming up. First up, we will have Mr. Krishnan Nair, KGN Group. The memento will be presented by Mr. Narayanan. Next up, we will have Mr. Vu Thai Son, Longson JSC. Next up, Mr. Rajesh Thakur, CSKS International Limited. Now, if I may also request Mr. Gauthaman of Reliable Cashew to present the memento to the moderator, please.